Hello. So, hi. Welcome again to our little show from NQB. This is where we showcase some of our really senior professionals within cybersecurity. Today, I've got Purav Desai, who's an expert within incident response, particularly within the Microsoft Azure Stack, and he's going to tell us his story on how he got into cyber. So, off straight to you, Purav. Tell us, how did you get into cyber?
Yeah, thank you for the intro, Musa. So when I first wanted to get into cyber, it was incredibly difficult as well to start with, right? Because I didn't even know who to contact and start out with. So the first thing I did was I approached recruitment agencies because I had recruitment agency success in previous roles. When I moved, for example, from retail to corporate IT, agencies really helped me. So I started reaching out to agencies, and what I noticed was I was getting a bit dismissed by them because they didn't see much experience, right? So I was like, okay, well, how can I get this experience? Now, thankfully, at the time, there were a lot of YouTubers, sharing content and open suggesting basically like projects and things for people to do. So one of the first things I did is I set up a home lab, right? So I set up a virtual machine on my laptop using Kali Linux as the OS and kind of did some basically cyber ethical hacking because I wanted to become an ethical hacker. So I was practicing things like Metasploit, following YouTube videos, etc. And that experience then, ultimately helped in demonstrating in the interview. And what I also then did is I sort of researched other people that were also looking to get into cyber and sort of, had ideas between them as well. But I think the biggest thing that really helped me to get into cyber was just the home lab experience. And nowadays with the cloud, like you can spin up a virtual machine in Azure. You don't even have to use your own laptop and practice those kind of attacks and document them. The key thing is document them and be able to talk about them in an interview because that's the demonstrable experience that will, actually land you eventually a role. But in the starting point, it will at least give you interviews and, opportunities to get questioned and build from there. So yeah, that's really how I got started.
That's really, really interesting that basically you spun up some home labs and you watched YouTube videos, which gave you the access into how to actually, what it constitutes a cyber attack or simulating that, how to look at basically the systems from that standpoint. But then that's really interesting. Did you then do any certs or any boot camps early on in your career? Maybe not straight away, but early on in your career, did you then go off and do some certs or boot camps to supplement your knowledge?
Yeah, I actually did do a boot camp. So before starting my first cyber role, I did attend a boot camp. In hindsight, I did give into the marketing. Boot camps typically say like, "Oh, starting salary 75K," right? It never really happens, right? Sorry to burst anyone's bubbles that's there. But what I will say is the boot camp was for Network Plus, Security Plus, and CEH, which are like the fundamental
Mm.
certifications towards security. Now, ironically, I didn't actually complete any of those certifications, but what helped is the knowledge that I got from the instructor and the slides and the material which then allowed me to kind of demonstrate that through the home labs that I talked about. But I think the biggest thing that was the most value from the bootcamp was the networking connections that I built. And I'm still friends with some of them today. And we, established a WhatsApp group. We regularly stayed in touch. We, bounced ideas back and forth. Some of them landed cyber, some of them went into other avenues because their interests changed. But I think that was the biggest thing. The bootcamp brought a sort of collective people together, which had the same vision of entering cybersecurity. So even though I didn't do the certifications and finish the bootcamp officially, I think I really benefited from just the network connections that I made. And one thing I'd like to say is the bootcamp provider, I don't mind naming them because I'm actually grateful to them, which is Robust IT. Robust IT came in really helpful because they were able to kind of give me practical experience. So what they did is in one of their offices, they allowed me to simulate some, port scanning and things like this. And they were able to write a testimonial for me, almost like I'm a paid contractor, but obviously it was kind of voluntary work. But to someone starting out, that's invaluable, right? You've got a kind of
Yeah.
testimonial and a credible evidence of your work. And that really then helped talk about in interviews and things like that. So yeah, credit to Robust IT. Sorry, I didn't finish the certs, but thank you for the networking and thank you for the validation through the testimonial.
That's really, really interesting. I don't think I've spoken to anybody else that's actually done a boot camp. So you're the first person I have to, and it's really interesting that you said that. I really like your take on it because traditionally I'm with you. I think a lot of boot camps promise a lot of stuff and don't deliver anywhere near that. and it's a lot of it is marketing, and I wish people would use their own brains to realize it's just nonsense. But I do like the thing that you said, whereby they gave you access to basically going in and simulating port scanning. They gave you a testimonial, which means they really actually, and the other side of it, which is networking, which is, in my opinion, I'm a big fan of networking, as everybody knows. I believe that that's the real way that you add value and you build real meaningful connections. So I think that's actually really interesting that you mentioned that. So I like that. I like that a lot. So my final question to you is, but what would you recommend to an entry level person trying to break into the industry? What are your key takeaways for them? And how they should approach breaking in.
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I would say, first of all, try and not get intimidated, right? Because there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of paths out there, right? Think about maybe what's interesting to you. So for example, for me, I wanted to initially become an ethical hacker. That interest changed because ethical hacker jobs weren't as much present in a company. For example, you only need 2 ethical hackers, whereas a SOC analyst, you'd need 5 or 6, right? So immediately I knew that there's more job chances going into a SOC analyst. So that's kind of the first thing, like, do some research, right? Look at the different avenues that are there. SOC analyst is one, GRC analyst is another one, pen testing is another one, and there's plenty more. And see maybe which one initially gravitates to you, and sort of dive into that a bit further. But realize that you don't have to stick to that, and you can pivot to another one sort of down the line as well. So that's one of the first things. Secondly, I would say look at certifications. Even though I don't have the Security Plus, going through the content of the Security Plus was really helpful to understand things like ports, encryption, the CIA triad, and PKI, various sort of components, authentication, authorization, radius servers, Kerberos, like all these kind of terms that you're likely to come across as a SOC analyst. Familiarize yourself with them, and if you can complete the certification, great. And if you're working towards it, then put it in the CV to say, I've studied Security Plus and I'm planning to take it in X amount of time. That's also fine. And whether you end up achieving it or not, well, if you're being honest, you should try and achieve it if you put it on your CV. But even if you don't, as long as you can demonstrate that experience and you can talk about the sort of modules and things you learn in an interview, that will give you a good chance, right? So that's the second thing. Third thing, networking, right? Musa, you said yourself you're a big fan of networking. Try and attend these kind of free cyber events, right? InfoSec was recently. You didn't need to be a company employee. You didn't need to pay to turn up. Just sign up online, just pull up, visit in person, and just start reaching out to different vendors and stores there. You may even, you never know, you might win a giveaway. For example, one provider, Security Blue Team, which is a training provider, they were giving away certification opportunities. And someone that I knew who reached out to me to get into cyber, he won that opportunity, and he's going to take advantage of it. And it will help him eventually land a role because he'll have an actually certification. But had he not gone to that free event, he may not have even won that giveaway in the first place, right? So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. If you're a bit nervous, intimidated, like I used to be when I first used to go to events, go with a friend, go with a couple of people, go with a family member. Just speak to people, and you'll find that people are really willing to help you. So that's the third one. Fourth one, work on your skills, right? So the key skills I'd say for cyber: communication, because you're constantly going to be talking to various stakeholders. Practice talking to, various members of your family. Practice talking to people locally in your area. Practice talking to, colleagues if you're working. If you're not working, other students or other people in your community. Just kind of get that feel of how to communicate properly. And as I said in the initial stage, what worked for me is the home labs, right? So the next skill I'd say is try and get some hands-on experience through home labs. There's plenty of home lab projects nowadays, especially with the cloud, Azure, AWS. Take your fancy and just spin those up. Document what you've done, right? Because then that will improve your skills on how to actually report right and document capturing, which is critical for cyber. And the last one, and this one's a bit hard until you're actually in the field, but start thinking about this if you get interviews or if you actually land a role, even as an intern. Look at what your business does. What is your business caring about most? So if they're a retailer, right, they're going to care about order processing. So immediately that you should be securing the order processing system. So let's say you take a vulnerability analyst role and you see a vulnerability on an order processing system, that that's one to prioritize and one to communicate effectively to the business to say, hey, you'd want to remediate this because if this is exploited, our orders are down, and if our orders are down, our business can't operate, right? So those are the key things that I would say. I wish I could remember them in high level to sort of summarize them, but those are the 4 or 5 that I would say off the top of my head to help people getting into cyber.
Absolutely, and I think I agree with all of that. I think what you said is common sense, And I think that it really, the fact that someone needs to choose a specialism early on, it's important. You can pivot later on, but you need to map your skills. And if I'm not mistaken, the UK Skills Council, they've actually now put together a website which helps people. I think there's 16 different job roles, and you can go through the matrix and find out based on your own skills and experience what would fit. I think that's a really good point, and I love the idea of the home labs, because I think the more practical experience, more important than certs and more important than actual boot camps, is actually that practical experience. Because to be honest, until you've actually done some of the actual work, I think it's very difficult for anyone to give you an opportunity, because you're literally really an unknown. I mean, book learning is one thing, but actually going on and working on a home lab, so a simulated environment, which is similar, I think for me, that's got to be top priority more than anything. And I think definitely networking. I mean, everyone knows I'm a massive networking fan. And you mentioned about the opportunities. One of my mentees actually won the same course. We went to their stand, and there was a spin the wheel job, and
Yep.
she won one of the courses there. So you're absolutely right. I've seen it firsthand. That there's things that they will give away that you would ordinarily have no chance of getting if you don't attend them. Like the old saying goes, if you're not in it, you can't win it. So I think you're absolutely right. So I really want to thank. I've really enjoyed this, bro. It's been very, very useful indeed. So thank you very much for your insight. It's been really, I think, very interesting. I think our listeners and our followers will definitely really appreciate this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Musa, and hope it helps the community to break into cyber.
Thank you. Right. So